Good morning and welcome to The Point. It is Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20, and good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9. This morning our guest is Deputy Chairman of the National Democratic Congress, Mr. Kennedy Roberts, and we're going to be talking about issues of national importance, current issues of national importance. Good morning, Mr. Roberts.
Good morning, Blossom, and good morning to all your viewers, listeners at home and abroad.
I think this is the first I've seen you since you've cut your hair. Well, speaking since you've cut your hair.
Yes, that's very true. It all happened. Well, I think it's a reflection of what we need in this country. All
right, fair enough. So let's go into it. We're going to start with let's say the most recent national commemoration. Yesterday, October 19th, 1983, we commemorated the 37th anniversary yesterday. And I know this is a topic that is dear to you.
Extremely.
Commemorating the event yesterday, your thoughts 37 years later, how far we've come since that massacre of October 19th?
Well, Blossom, the reality is 37 years seems like 37 hours or 37 weeks. It doesn't seem to be that long, but when we think of the reality, it has been 37 years since Brother Morris Bishop and the others were brutally executed at Fort Rupert at the time. And a lot of us have not really been able to heal and deal with it and move on. And there are a lot of Grenadians at home and abroad who still feel the trauma. And I know that every October, there's a particular feeling that goes through the society that really saddens us, because while we have seen a lot of things going on in the 37 years, the persons who were charged and were in jail have been released and carrying on with their lives, and still we haven't had the conclusion with regards to the remains of those who were killed. And the evidence is there. There's enough to tell us what happened on the fort. They moved the bodies to Calavini, they burned it, the Americans came in, the Americans had access to it. I've spoken with persons from St. George's University who gave evidence in the little commission that they had, which clearly state that St. George's University had access to the bodies with the Americans, but the Americans have never confirmed, yes, they took the remains. So we need to clarify our history. We need to make sure that our young people understand what happened during that period. And a lot of the programs of the revolution are still being discussed today, like primary health care. So it is a time of reflection, yes, but it goes back to when should we actually have this holiday. This should be our Memorial Day. The October 25th is the official holiday, and over the years there have been discussion as to should we strike a balance and commemorate both October 19th and 25th by having a particular day, the third Monday of November or the fourth Monday of November, something like that, being the official holiday. So we need to still clarify a lot of things, but the bottom line is we need to move on. We need a new chapter in our history. We need to show the love and understanding to move on. I know for me, it is still hard at times to deal with certain realities, but we have to move on, and we have to have a brighter chapter in Grenada's history. So I hope we remember October 83, but we have to move on and create that new vision for those who were not physically there.
I was in a conversation yesterday, and the person said to me, since Phyllis Code's passing in September, it reminded him that there's a very real possibility that the people who have information about the whereabouts of Prime Minister's bishop and the members of his cabinet bodies, that they would take it to the grave. Is that a thought that has occurred to you?
Not really, because I am aware that they dispose of the bodies in Calavini, in the hole that this is the information that most of us are aware of. I remember there was an article in the Barbados Nation newspaper with the American soldier standing over the hole talking about the remains. This information is out there. I'm sure after they must have some way of getting this access to this information. Freedom of Information Act in the US supposed to make the Grenada information that were secret public now. And there's a lot of things that we need to go into for healing. But I believe that there's a lot that those who were involved are not saying. But with regards to the bodies, I am pretty convinced that when they were disposed of in Calavini, they had access, the US government had access to it, and they were the last ones who, even if it is a fingernail, there was this talk about the family members getting certain pieces of jewelry from that hole. So we have to be objective, we have to be honest, we have to try and get the facts, and as you're rightly saying, people are dying. But one of the points that I think is significant about is that the people who died, most of them were in their 30s. The people who were involved in the forefront of the revolution were in their 20s, in our teens. And today we are asking young people to step forward and be involved. And sometimes our older leaders feel that they're not ready and they're the future. But the young people are the present. The youth are the present. They have a role to play. We have a lot of young people in their 20s and 30s who are capable of making contributions, but they sit back because the system doesn't create that environment. So that is why, to come into the politics now of today, the NDC is making that commitment to young people, that our approach to development is not to have you as seen as the future, but have you as an integral role in the present, in making decisions now, in getting involved in and putting your energy in areas where we are too lackadaisical. So we have a lot of hope in the youth of Grenada, because we know that at 40 years ago, it was the youth who took the mantle of leadership and who put Grenada on a path that was very positive. It's unfortunate that October 83 led to its demise. And some of the things say it's karma, because during the revolution, we did certain things that could have been done very differently. But we cannot go back. We have to heal, we have to show that love, and we have to think of Grenada in that same revolutionary manner, where we want to see everybody improve their quality of life, where we want to see health and education as a central pillar for social structure, so that once we give a young person the opportunity to be healthy and strong and productive and educated, we know that our future is going to be bright. So 37 years after the collapse of the revolution, it is almost an embarrassment to see us in Grenada still talking about people failing this common entrance CPA exam and so on, can't get into secondary school. It is still a shame to hear us talking about primary health care and getting the basics in our school health program. It is a shame to see the way in which we treat each other as people. It is a shame to see how we do not come out and volunteer and build our community and clean our communities and have pride in our country. And a lot of it has resulted in the leadership of the last 25 years.
All right, let's move now to another topic. I know you're passionate about health. One of the most recent developments in health is the diagnosis and confirmation of cases 25, 26, and 27th of COVID-19. With this latest developments, what are your thoughts, and by extension, the NDC's thoughts on what's happening now with COVID-19?
Now, COVID, we're now in October, and COVID has been around for several months, and the reality is, based on what is happening in the world, not just the US, but Europe is now the epicenter, where the cases in France, in Italy, in the UK, it's in Belgium, they've just locked down several countries till December, so we're seeing it around, and we cannot say when it's going to end. So the reality is the NDC acknowledges that we must try to come back to some level of normalcy. But this new COVID period is one where we cannot do business as usual. We need now to put our systems in place to have a certain level of service, a certain quality of work, so that we can ensure, minimize the COVID coming into the country. So in terms of our points of entry, the cases, case 25 and 27 were imported cases, and we acknowledge that the testing and the approach being used currently has too many loopholes. I've made reference to persons indicating a couple of weeks ago there was a lot of quarreling and cursing and anger in the returning residents. A person who worked down there said they were even scared at a point in time that these people might get violent. And we have to acknowledge that when people are coming back home and the stresses of COVID that we are all dealing with, we need to create that as perfect as an environment as possible to facilitate them coming back at home. So we need to tighten up the entry points. We need to make sure that the quarantine locations where these people have to go are areas where people can deal with their physical and mental well-being. The fact that the adequate security was not in place to prevent case 25 from leaving the location is an indication that needs to be tightened up. They've been talking for weeks and months now about the bracelet, and these technologies are out there already. So we have to step up the game and ensure that we are more professional, we are tighter at the borders, we have a higher standard. Because the reality is you cannot continue to be locked down, and we have to try to open up and be normal. That is why it is so unfortunate that the Points Lane Morris Bishop Airport has not really been able to step up to the standards needed to facilitate the British Airways and other aircrafts coming in. I understand that Air Canada was supposed to come in today, and somebody who was scheduled to come in indicated that they have to now try and come through Barbados because that flight is no longer coming in. So I'm not sure if you're aware of that. But the reality is we have to step up our standards, and we have to make sure that the quality of what we do now is at another level. As we talk about the cruise ships wanting to come back, this is something, okay, you have to have dialogue, you have to look at what is happening in the other islands of the Caribbean, and we have to work in a manner with the hope that we minimize the risk to our population while trying to create some economic activity. So we have to, the NDC acknowledges the importance of opening the economy, but how we go about it and the quality of our standards and the approach we use to facilitate our people. We have to, again, I would use this as a theme for this discussion to blossom, the importance of love. We have to show the love. We have to make people feel like, listen, COVID is real, but we have to still show the love.
In addition to COVID, we're also dealing with dengue and leptospirosis. Dengue has an outbreak just this morning, actually. I was reading a story of St. Lucia recording its fourth death related to dengue, suspected dengue. How can we move forward from this? Or help going forward?
Dengue is one of these endemic diseases. That means every year we have a certain amount of cases of dengue. But dengue is one of the preventable diseases in that if we deal with our source reduction, meaning try to get the mosquito larvae dead before they become mosquitoes, it plays a big role. Now that we're fogging, it's an indication that yes, we are trying to do something because the fogging helps to a certain extent. But again, what has to be a constant in our health system is education and awareness of what's going on. So because we had COVID, we heard nothing about mosquito and dengue and so on, but the message has to be continuous. we cannot give up on other aspects of our health system because of COVID and use that as the excuse for everything going off track. So dengue is real, but we have to educate our population and make them understand that in our homes, we have to try and ensure that we throw away the water from our vases. A lot of us have the guttering on our roofs, but sometimes it has some leaves in it, it get blocks up, and we don't realize that rain will come for a few days and the water in the guttering stays there and creates mosquitoes. So we have to ask households to pay greater attention to the water around them. Water settles in the garden and creates, find out, if they're settling for too long and creating a mosquito and address it. So we have to take a lot of personal responsibility where dengue is concerned. But again, we need the guidance and the leadership and the support and the education and the information from the government because they ultimately have that responsibility. But as we've seen, the health sector has not been given the sort of attention it deserves over the years. And unfortunately, we have to deal with problems like dengue and even leptospirosis. We're seeing more and more rats dying in the road. A couple of days ago, this Tempe Mount Parnassus main road now is busy as ever and all kind of traffic. And in this last couple of days, I saw about 3-4 rats dead in the road. And when you see rats dead in the road, it's an indication that there are more of them out in the community. So we have to do cleanup, and we make reference during the revolution, that was an integral part of life. Communities took pride in keeping their community clean. We didn't have to depend on no debushing gang to get a 2-fortnight walk and call that development. No, the pride that you and the value added to your country when the community comes out and keep their environment clean cannot be put into dollars and cents. And these young people and the people generally who have to depend on this little fortnight work to sustain their livelihood is an embarrassment 40 years after the revolution.
So you noted something earlier about another cancelled flight, which also reminded me of a downgrade at the MBIA because we did not have the requisite equipment to accommodate the bigger aircrafts. I remember the NDC sending out a news release, I believe it was last week. Just highlight for us what was in that news release and the NDC's stance on this latest development at MBIA.
We feel that the management lapsed. First of all, the management has to ensure that these things, there must be checklists. These things shouldn't be taken for granted. When you're running an airport, when you're at that level of operation where it has not just an impact on Grenada, but an impact on the world when you cancel a flight like that, we have to realize that the pride we take in what we do, the efficiency of putting our systems in place, that appeared not to have been in place at the airport, and as a result, the management has to take some responsibility. But again, the whole way in which we are lackadaisical these days, as if our country's on autopilot, we're not seeing that leadership and the energy that we need in this country at this time. So basically, we felt that the airport dropped the ball, and it is a reflection of what is happening in the wider society. So, for example, I'm raising the concern that with the COVID reality, what is happening to our medical supplies and pharmaceutical sector? Have we ordered medical supplies for the year? Has it arrived? Do we have expired stock in the warehouse? I hope that they're managing these things adequately, because I know being on lockdown and under this COVID environment for most of the year, a lot of things get shortchanged. What is happening with our immunization program? Are we up to date? I would really love to hear more about that. In terms of what is going on with the other aspects of our health system. Because when we see this thing happen at Point Saline, why am I saying in Point Saline, Maurice Bishop International Airport, we have to realize that something in the system is flawed, and we have to take note in other areas.
The news release stated that the responsibility falls ultimately on the shoulders of the minister, as well as the excuse that there is a delay in shipment is not an acceptable one.
All right. Well, I didn't have it in front of me, but I will address that. Now, they say that there was a delay in the shipment. And again, with the importance of this, with the impact it has on the persons who are on the flight or were supposed to be on the flight coming to Grenada, they get their COVID tests and ready to travel, and they now have to repeat it whenever the next available opportunity. So ultimately, the minister has responsibility for that sector. And by saying, and the way she came out with it as if it's an excuse, that really and truly she should have been putting the responsibility on the management, and not rather than trying to divert and make an excuse and cover. But yes, ultimately the minister has to take responsibility for any lapse in under her ministry.
All right, let's take a quick break and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion. We're speaking with the Deputy Chairman of the NDC, Kennedy Roberts. This is To The Point on Classic and GBN. We'll be right back.
You know, one day I woke up and, you know, they painted a set of pedestrian crossing all along the streets. You know, nobody told us how to use that thing properly.
I know how.
You're serious?
Every safe, good driver knows about these things. As a driver, you have to be very attentive. You know you're coming up close to a pedestrian cross, you start slowing down immediately, looking to see if there's any pedestrian on the side getting ready to cross. If there is, you stop on the line that is a certain distance before the crosswalk. Then you would see the pedestrian put their hands out, looking directly at you, indicating that they are going to cross. And only when you have come to a complete stop, that is when they will quickly and safely cross to the other side. And then you continue happily on your journey.
Stop, look, hand out, eye contact, wait for pedestrian to cross. Then you happily continue on your journey.
This message is brought to you by this group of insurance companies, the Traffic Advisory Body, and the Traffic Department.
The Grenada Food and Nutrition Council remind you to boost your immune system and give yourself a fighting chance against COVID-19. Consume foods that are rich in vitamin C, like fruits and vegetables. For example, oranges, grapefruit, mandarin, lemon, spinach, cabbage, and tomatoes. Vitamin B6 and folic acid that is found in chicken, turkey, fish, grain foods like oats, bread, local provisions, dry beans, and peas. Another immune system booster is vitamin E, found in nuts, corn, sunflower or canola oils, and leafy vegetables like spinach, broccoli, and kale. Iron, zinc, and vitamin D are also important to strengthen your immunity. So try foods like lean meats, eggs, lentils, mackerel, tuna, and jacks. Our local spices, ginger, clove, and turmeric, among others, can help decrease inflammation and support the immune system. Remember to practice safe food handling. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council, reminding you that a strong immune system is one of the best ways to fight COVID-19.
We believe this new virus spreads mostly from person to person through respiratory droplets produced when someone who is sick coughs or sneezes. This is similar to how flu and other respiratory illnesses spread. These droplets can land in the mouth or nose of people nearby, or
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with the Deputy Chairman of the National Democratic Congress, Kennedy Roberts. Mr. Roberts, let's go back to COVID-19. One of the issues that we've heard, it comes from the folks in quarantine. One, with the length of time that they have to be in quarantine and the length of time it takes to get results. Has the NDC heard those complaints, or you personally heard those complaints?
Yes, I've heard the fact that there's some uncertainty the guidelines are not very clear, and this is one of the complaints that a few persons who are in quarantine is saying, that you say, okay, 4 days, but at the end of the 4 days when you get the test, you have to wait another day or two to get the results. So really, it's more than 4 days, 5-6 days. There's some inconsistency with not getting back in touch with some of the passengers who came in, they did the test, and they're waiting and say, okay, on Wednesday you're going to get the results, and on Wednesday they're not hearing anything, and they have to be calling, and you know, it's not ready, and so there's not a clean, crisp way of dealing with it. So the duration of time needs to be looked at. Now, in a lot of other countries, it's the 14 days, it's 10 days, it's longer. So Grenada has to strike a balance as to what is appropriate based on the science, based on our ability to do tests and get the results back in a timely manner, and really take this at another level of quality. So while we are going through the motion and doing certain things, I think the area of concern now is to reduce the risk of somebody coming through the system with the virus, to tighten up that procedure in terms of the whole testing and so on. I know down at SGU, I did my test because when we opened back campus to the general population, we had to do our tests, and we have to do our assessment every time we go on campus every day. So we are being monitored down there, and but the testing is something that needs to continue, especially the high-risk people. But one of the things that is also concerning is that sometimes we talk about the cost of testing more and more people, but we see from just this case 25 how costly it could be to do contact tracing, and the inconvenience of people having to stay home, the impact it have on schools, and the whole cost of that person coming into the system and going into the community is much more than the cost of tests. So I think collaborating with SGU, who has a PCR machine, making sure the other private sector entities who have PCR machines collaborate and make sure that our testing protocol is crisp.
Another issue that members of the public have expressed in relation to the regulation is the way charges have been laid on specifically individuals by themselves in vehicles not wearing masks.
Again, you know, what is missing is the love. This government is taking an approach of law enforcement rather than love. We need to realize that COVID is affecting people in different ways. There are a lot of people who don't even want to listen to radio, they're not in tune with the media. So, you know, there's a video going around with the young lady from Grenville who was there alone, and the police addressed her, bring her to the station to charge her while facilitating someone else without a mask. These sort of inconsistencies, and why are you doing it? Are you doing it to generate revenue, or are you doing it to reduce the spread of COVID? And if it's to reduce the spread of COVID, the NDC is advocating an approach of education, of public awareness, of communicating. When the police meet somebody without a mask, before you start, okay, it's a ticket for you. And I saw it in St. George's last week, in the junction of Halifax Street and Hillsborough Street, a guy who is known to have some little mental stress. And the police want to give him the ticket. And of course, he's stressing out because somebody was saying he had on the mask a while ago, but he didn't have it on at that point in time, and insisting to give him the ticket. And people are asking, who you expect to pay the ticket? Are you going to criminalize the man now, apart from him having his stresses of life? What is the rationale for wanting to give people tickets left, right, and center? But, you know, you have to show that love, and this is what this government is missing at the top, and it's perpetuating to other levels. So our policemen, police officers are not understanding and playing that role because they feel that they have the power, they have the authority, so they're going to use it. And this giving of tickets left, right, and center is stressing people out more than, you know, you're giving a person a $250 supporting the seed program and other support, and then you want to charge one shot $350 to some of these same poor people. Where is the love? And this is one of the things that is concerning the NDC. We're seeing the society reach to the stage where, we're missing that love and connection with each other, and we need to get that back.
At this point in the program, we're going to open the platform for our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns for Mr. Roberts. 435-2041 is the landline number. It's also the WhatsApp number. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp. You can also comment on the Facebook and YouTube pages. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Morning. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Roberts, I'm glad to hear that you're talking about education. Maybe you, possible alone, or a few among the few that know what is education. Now, the rest of the people know education is passing exam and only reading, writing, and mathematics. That's education. Now, I'm hearing that you're saying, and that's my feeling too, and I've always preached that. In fact, I don't know if you're against me too, and I can't tell you the lady on the air against me, but every time I talk about education, people saying, you believe you're educated. And this is what does hurt me. Now I'm hearing you talking about education. Education is the all-round development of the individual, everything you could think about. You're talking about rats. You're talking about developing their homes. All this is education. Look, I have looked into what the policies are doing, the policemen and women are doing. I'm not telling you that they're doing the right. To me, they are not doing it in the right way, as you try to hint. Now, I have looked at, they're charging left, right, and center. And I'm asking myself, they're charging for tires, they're charging for without mask, as if you tell them to see how much money you could get to run the country. So I am wondering what does that mean? In fact, maybe the policemen want education too.
Okay.
But education in a different field, not how to arrest and how to do this and how to do that.
All right.
So this is what education is. Time that we learn.
Thank you very much, caller. Mr. Roberts?
And Blossom, the reality is, every one of us, every Grenadian have to look at ourselves and ask, what is the next step we need to take in our educational development? Right now, there are so many free courses going on all over the world, all over all universities, Coursera, all universities having free courses. We need to tap into that. We need to take some responsibility and say, okay, our educational development is important to get my family out of poverty. Education is undoubtedly the key. And as the brother said, it is not just about in the school. Continuous education, informing on what is going on with diabetes, hypertension, the same dengue, the same COVID environment. We need to be talking to our people. The amount of people that are going through mental stress during this COVID times? Do you know the amount of people who are depressed and going through really difficult times to meet commitments for their families? There are a lot of people who, because they don't want to they're begging, so they're doing without. Many children can't get the things that they used to get pre-COVID and don't understand why. We have to think of the human beings out there, the real people who are struggling, and our system. We don't have to be a give out freely, but we need to understand our people a bit more and try to ensure that the things are in place to help people step up. Are we giving support for that community backyard gardening? Yes, they have a project, but they're selecting who they want on the project, and of course, in this reality, if you're not supporting the NNP, you're not going to benefit in a substantial way in anything that is happening. So we know anytime you see that there is a select group of people that are going to be put into this program and we bring in 100 people, look at the pictures and see who gets in the plans and when they're giving out special plans, and it's the NDC supporters are being left out. and this is part of the complaint of this government is running the country like a party. But we have to change this, and people are realizing that we have not made the progress that we deserve as a Grenadian people. We are proud, rich in history, rich in culture. We have so many Grenadians in top positions throughout the world. You know, we need to tap into those resources, but we're not creating that environment. Because I was involved with the NNP, and the reason I'm not there because I acknowledge that the concern wasn't the people's development, the concern was power, you know, and once they could be in power, then they can run things and do what they want and facilitate what they want. And this is untenable, this is wrong, you know, and that is why the NDC, Sister Franca Bernardine, is a different kind of person. She's a leader that is aware of the importance of people's development, of proper structures and management. So it would be a totally different type of leadership, inclusive, involving people. And as you see right now, a coalition is building up of people who are disgusted with this type of governance we have been experiencing with this government. And as a result, Grenadians have to rally and be strong and realize that we can do it. We're going to do it democratically. This is the system we have, and we're just waiting for the opportune time.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Citizen Welsh, and good morning to your guest, Mr. Roberts. Yes, Mr. Roberts, I fully agree. We have to change, but we have to treat them as was Golden Dawn was treated in Greece, as a criminal organization, and make sure that they all take jail for the crimes they're committing against these people. But let's go to the meat of the matter, Mr. Roberts. I'm asking this question because I don't know, I'm getting mixed signals and some people say messages. I have heard on the radio crystal clear that we have one set of protocols, I'd rather call them if we may, biosanitary measures or biosanitary protocols for the entrance of foreigners to our ports. But I hear some things coming from the so-called Minister of, what's it again, Tourism. Tell me, Mr. Roberts, do you know that we have a separate set of biosanitary protocols for the entrance to our directly, not through the ports, but to the beaches? I'd appreciate your comment on it. Thank you very much and have a nice day. William.
Thank you, Citizen Rollo.
I am not aware of protocols with regards to the beaches. I am aware that the minister put out the discussion on the cruise ships that want to start coming here with regards to using some beaches, not telling Grenadians that they can't go to the beaches, but making them know that in this COVID times, they're trying to strike a balance. Again, there are also protocols for the yachting sector. When yachts coming here, how they operate, and you know there are protocols for different things, and I think it is important not just to have protocols, but have them of a high quality that you're minimizing the risk of persons coming in with COVID, because this is the bottom line. It's a public health issue, and we have to try and put the public health measures in place to tighten that loop and minimize the risk, because the risk is always going to be there. You know, we're always going to have the potential for somebody coming in with the virus. So it's about identifying it, quarantine it, because the science is clear in terms of how it functions. So we have to take it one day at a time, but try to improve the quality of what we do. And as I say, Brother Rola, I'm not too sure about this protocols for the beach.
Back to the phone lines. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning, and good morning to Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts, instead of generalizing, I mean, you're on the radio as a representative of the NDC, and you spoke about plans that were given out that somebody said, because you cannot substantiate it. You are not an eyewitness to the event. Why not, let us say, for example, come up with scientific, political, and, advanced, educated methodologies and strategies and explain it to say, hey, listen, vote us. We are going to divert from that path, and these are the facts. Instead of hearsay, them say. That is 14th century type of politics. The character assassination, the propaganda, and the lies, they have not worked from 2008 to now, and they are not going to work again. One thing I want to say now too is that I remember as a little boy growing up in the 70s, there were primary health care in Grenada, under Uncle Gary's government. Where NIS building is today, Mom used to bring me by the doctor. And they had a schedule there. You go there to the doctor, then you go to the dispensary, you get stuff. My mom come from St. Patrick's, and I remember when we go to spend time with my aunt, deceased aunt in River Sally, there was a medical station there. There's a medical station in Happy Hill. There's a medical station in Mount Morrison. All these did not come from the Tuesday, the 13th of March, 1979. They were in existence. So I just use this, and that can be substantiated, that primary healthcare in this country was brought by the Eric Gary regime. Whether or not you like Gary or you supported him is besides the point. What I would like to see in this dear country of ours is that people speaking the truth. Don't try to cut down a tree to get a leaf. We should stop the lies. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My brother, one of the things I've grown to appreciate is difference of opinion. And while I would say we have a different approach to it, we might have a different understanding, when you start coming out and say lies, it was on the newspaper where Mr. Pierre from St. Andrews, I know Mr. Pierre being involved with the NNP when I was there too. He was the one in the picture receiving the plan from the Minister of Agriculture. So you don't try to ignore the reality that this government provide the support to their members and their supporters predominantly. There might be little cases. So it's not a matter of me trying to derail the government. It's a fact of life. However, I've also made the point that the leadership of Sister Franca Bernardine is going to be different. We are going to be concerned with all Grenadians growing to another level. So I deal with that. In terms of primary health care, the concept of primary health care was developed and advocated in 1978 at a conference in Alma Ata in Russia at the time, the Soviet Union at the time, where that concept of primary health care was used. So when the terminology primary health care was used in the health system, it came out of that conference in 1978. Soon after, in 1979, the revolution took place and really integrated what you call primary health care, my brother, is not primary health care. It is one element in terms of the health center providing service. Primary health care is about looking at water and sanitation, looking at your food and nutrition, looking at your maternal and child health program. It is more than just having a building. So yes, under Uncle Gary time, they had health centers, but the concept of primary health care and an integrated health system was pioneered not just in Grenada during the revolution, but in Dominica. They were one of, even before Grenada, with same Carissa Etienne, who is now the director of PAHO, promoting primary health care in Dominica. So I won't get into the semantics. We appreciate the role that Eric Gary played in thing, but when it comes to health, there is nothing that the GULP administration really had in place to compare with what the revolution did for health. And health is about people and people involvement, and do your history and get your facts straight.
Somebody on WhatsApp, I asked Minister Steele if the NDC was part of the decision-making process with the COVID virus and Grenada's response, and he said yes. Can you tell us how NDC was involved in the decision-making as alluded to by Minister Steele?
Well, I've stated publicly, I think on your program, that the Prime Minister met with Sister Franca. He invited her to recommend persons to be on the Economic Committee, the Social Committee, and the Health Committee. Brother Lennox Andrews was involved in the Economic Committee. He participated in a couple meetings. The Sister Ann John was involved with the Social Committee, and she participated in a few meetings. But I was never invited to a meeting of the Health Committee. I spoke to the Minister of Health. He actually called me and recommended that I be on another committee. And I indicated that, this is not the committee I was recommended for. And I think that committee was chaired by Sister Emmeline Pear. She never contacted me. So in terms of the health component, we were not directly involved.
There's a YouTube question that is asking, what is the NDC doing to help their supporters?
Well, first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that the supporters of the NDC have gone through a difficult period in recent times, losing 2 elections back to back, 15-0. There has been some difficulties to mobilize and energize the party. It's coming up to 1 year since Sister Franca Bernardine has been elected as our new political leader, and she has done a lot of the foundation work now. We have developed a strategic plan, of which one of the elements is support to our members and our supporters. We have been providing assistance to some families during this COVID period. We've had the hamper program, we had the masks program. We got fruits and vegetables from farms and delivered to people around, to schools and police stations. We brought water. So within the limited resources of the party, we've tried to do what we can materially, but we're also talking to our members. We've given them the assurance that things are going to be better. We're trying to put the structures in place to get the constituency branches, fully functional. We know that to win the election, people must be registered. So we're helping our members to get registered and do the things needed to win an election. So we know it's not yet 3 years since the last election, but we know in our system, the Prime Minister can call an election anytime he wants. So we have to be prepared. But I think the Grenadian people have to realize that registering now and making sure your name is on the list and waiting to hear when we will have the opportunity to have an election. I think the Grenadian people are showing their readiness already, even though the party is working towards the candidates and these sort of things. I think the people will be mobilized whenever the bell rings.
Back to the phone lines. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blossom, and how are you?
I'm good.
It's very nice listening to Mr. Roberts, but Mr. Roberts actually don't know what he's talking about. I wish he'll keep it straight, because whatever he says, I want him to realize that we like it so, and we're going to keep it so. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I respect your opinion, my brother, and this is one of the realities. The NNP and the supporters are feeling the pressure. They're realizing that they can no longer fool the people with the basic talk and saying, yeah, Mr. Abbas, I know what you're talking about. My brother, I respect your opinion, and I know myself. I don't have to take your opinion to validate my reality.
A question on WhatsApp. I am not for NNP or NDC, but I want the NDC to come on a program and say what their plans are for taking the country further. Less time should be spent criticizing the NNP, and tell us how the NDC will make it better for us. I would love for either party to try and convince me or win me over, because so far neither party has my vote.
Okay, well, I appreciate that comment, and we're doing that. As I said, we just completed our strategic plan, and when it comes to health and social security in particular, one of the things that the NDC is going to certainly do is put greater emphasis on this concept of social security. We are taking our people for granted. We are not looking at the long-term development of our people. When you live abroad and you see how the U.S. Social Security system functions, from the time you're born, you're given a Social Security number, and you have that throughout your life. They're able to monitor. So from even your paying of taxes, your contribution to Social Security, all these things are in a structured way, not to pressure people, but to give them a better life when they retire. We have a situation in Grenada, a lot of our people are retiring in poverty. The little pension they're getting from NIS cannot adequately meet their needs. So the NDC is going to make a commitment to look at Social Security in a comprehensive way from birth to death. So the Social Security programs that we now have politicized through the Ministry of Social Development, those programs can be integrated into a restructured NIS. We want to see an NIS where they're not just focused on collecting your contributions and managing that contributions. We We want to see an NIS that can have a more proactive role in developing projects that can help the elderly or pensioners in Grenada, as I say, living in poverty, and they have a lot of Grenadians who are elderly who don't have a pension. So we have to look at social security in a much more comprehensive way and tying health into it and tying a more improved quality of life for our people. So social security is one example of where the NDC is going to put tremendous effort and improve the lives of Grenadians in the long term, not just the short term, give me a fish.
There was another comment.
Yeah.
I have to...
And we have the last issue on the list we had to chat about there.
Yes, just let me take this caller and then we'll get to it. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Mr. Robert is saying they are really fox. But the last two person that called MT from Nawasa and the last man, they are direct beneficiaries for NP, so they don't see nothing going wrong. As long as them living good, that's all they want. So, Mr. Roberts, continue what you are saying. You are speaking facts. Don't study them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. So you have some either side of the fence.
You see, I think the objective Grenadians are listening and they're striking that balance. And yes, both parties have had flaws in their history, but the NNP is the one in government. And I'm not criticizing in a discreet way. I'm saying facts and I'm letting the people make their decision.
The question that I was looking for, what is the NDC's stance in regards to the reissuance of voters' ID cards and the suggestions made to amend the RPA Cap 286A?
Well, again, this is one of the concerns the party has, and we have a team, Sister Claudia Joseph, Philip Alexander, I think Brother Lingham is involved, and a couple others who are working closely with this electoral office issue. We know that the bottom line is we have to be on the voters list to be able to vote in the next election. And even with all the simi-dimi taking place, our advice to Grenadians is that go out and register and get your ID card. The vote has to be so overwhelming that we would not have to be concerned about the tricks of the past, because we know after the last election, both in the tongue of St. George and St. George Northeast, petitions were made where the parliamentary office validated, yes, there were several people who were not supposed to be on the list that actually were on the list and voted. And even though those complaints were made before the election, the electoral office said they would do it after. So we have to make sure that we just go out and register. Let's work towards getting our support on the ground. And yes, the electoral office would try all sorts of ways of doing things the way they want to, but we have a team that is monitoring it, that is closely following and addressing it. So while I am not part of that team directly, I know it is being addressed, and our advice is go and get registered, make sure your name is on the list, so that when that bell rings, you're not disenfranchised.
And as we wrap up, Mr. Roberts, marijuana, just a few weeks ago, the National Democratic Congress came out and asked on the government to decriminalize marijuana. The government came out a few days later saying that it was part of their discussions. Any latest developments with your call?
Well, certainly. We have been going on the ground and talking to people to get the views, and the overwhelming majority of Grenadians are supportive of the move. But what we see the tricks of a government doing again is that they came out soon after and said, yeah, we had a committee and we're setting up a committee. But then we had the throne speech, which is the indication of the policies of the government. You didn't hear one word about decriminalizing of marijuana. So we know that this government is not interested in it. And we're saying it not to create mental health problems, because mental health is one of the concerns that we have in the party, and we're going to be addressing it in a much more comprehensive primary health care program. But we see that this government is just trying to get the little political mileage. But the bottom line is, it is the right thing to do. When we look at the amount of young people who are given a criminal record And, you know, a guy who was in his 40s, maybe 50s, was telling me, he said, Mr. Roberts, this thing around for so long that there are a lot of us. And he said he was one of the persons who was disenfranchised from getting opportunities because he was charged for having a spliff when he was young. And he spent all his life having that on his mind. And while we talk about the young people, there are a lot of the persons now who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who experience the negative force of the law because of a spliff. And the time has reached in the world where the information is there. The United Nations Narcotics Drug Control Committee is meeting on the 3rd and the 4th of December to look at a proposal from the World Health Organization to reduce the category of marijuana from the class 1 drug, as they put it, to another class. Don't put it in the category of the cocaine and heroin and so on. So the United Nations is moving in that direction. The world, as we see in the US and all over in the region, the CARICOM report, which I mentioned, are all information we have to use to guide us. But the bottom line is we must take a Grenadian approach. We must have the dialogue. We must have the consultation. We must look at the examples of the other islands around us, see what approaches they use, see what is relevant for us in Grenada. But we cannot have a criminal justice system who continue to put the problem heavily on the souls of the poor and the young in the society because of something that is considered now not to be as detrimental as it was perceived in the past. So the NDC believe that they're doing the right thing for the right reason. We understand that this government will try to get some political mileage, but we know that they're not capable of putting the things in place because they don't have the passion and that vision for that policy. So the NDC is basically saying to the people of Grenada that we are going to be objective, we're going to provide the awareness, the education, the information, we're going to put in place the other programs and policies that would ensure that the health aspect that is highlighted is going to be addressed and minimize the risk to children and young people. So it is a policy that is grounded in a lot of evidence, in a lot of facts, and we are moving ahead because we know it's the right thing to do.
Mr. Roberts, thank you very much. I think we covered a lot of things this morning. Thank you for being our guest this morning.
It is such a pleasure as always, Blossom.
Thank you.
Have a blessed day.
Thank you. You too. Stay safe and stay COVID-free.
Certainly, I will.
That was Deputy Chairman of the National Democratic Congress, Kennedy Roberts, our guest this morning. We thank him so much. And thank you, our viewers and listeners, for tuning in. Those of you who posed your questions, I know I got to most of them this morning, and hopefully the answers were satisfactory. That's the end of my time today. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz, but to start off Mid-Morning Buzz, remember we are joining the Government Information Service in just about 3 minutes or so for this morning's post-cabinet briefing, which is expected to be facilitated by Minister of Health Nicholas Steele. We will broadcast the proceedings on Classic and GBN, so stay tuned for that. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, God willing. Until then, have yourselves a safe and productive Tuesday.